Like just recently, people are realizing how valuable it is. The injury prevention part is huge. Like these guys, let's say the cap's $100 million and 30 million of it they paid to guys that didn't play. Like that's as bad of an investment as you can get. You get zero for $30 million. Like that's horrible. So I think the field has changed a lot from that standpoint, right? Like it's not just like, all right, hey, my guy's 350 pounds and he's really big and strong. Now it's like, okay, cool. How many games did he miss? How well is he playing? I feel like the more information we gather, the better we can help these guys. And I don't think there's like one set program for everybody, obviously, because we're all so individualized. People say sports specific. Okay, well, what does that mean? To me, it's position specific, it's body specific, it's even more than that. But for us, what we found is like the movement pattern and the actual body movements that they go through, to me, is more valuable because that's the only thing they're bringing with them from the weight room or from the clinic or wherever we are helping these guys. The only thing they're leaving there with is their body. So if you can master the mechanics of your body, I think that is the transferability of what we do.
Welcome to the Exercise is Health podcast, where we're talking about exercise, health, and the interconnectedness of the two. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and we will be coming to you every single week from our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Exercise is Health podcast. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and we are coming to you from our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg in Schaumburg, Illinois. Now, at Muscle Activation Schaumburg, we believe your health is your most valuable asset. Your health is one of the biggest influencers of the quality and quantity of time that you have. And while there are many aspects of health, our expertise is exercise. Exercise has been proven time and again to not only improve your health, but also increase your longevity and improve your quality of life. And today we have a phenomenal guest for you, none other than Ian Mack. Ian Mack is a renowned sports scientist who has partnered with the world's best athletes, from Olympic teams to top players in all four major U.S. sports leagues, including his recent work with Chicago Blackhawks right wing Patrick Kane. Mack was born and raised in Onondaga County in Syracuse, New York, where the rates of poverty and preventable disease like obesity and diabetes are extremely high. This environment inspired him to become a trainer and to continuously challenge himself to seek better answers on how to improve human performance. Ian, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to our show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Charlie and Julie.
Yeah, man. So, Julie and I were talking, and I don't know if she knows this, but out of all the people that we've interviewed, I think there's only been two other people that I've known longer than I've known you, and those are my dad and my brother. And because you and I met back in 2007, the first round of the NCAA tournament, and you were playing for Brockport State, I was playing for Williams, and we met in that first round there, and then we were able to get reunited later in Chicago in 2012. No, man, so give us more about your background, about how you got into sports, how you got into exercise, and then kind of taking us more towards present day.
Yeah, so I grew up in Syracuse, New York, and really the only game in town there from like a winning or business perspective is Syracuse University men's basketball. Mm-hmm. Which is kind of interesting because it's NC2A, so it's not supposed to be that, but that's a big game in town there. So pretty much everybody there is a huge Syracuse Orangemen men's basketball fan, and I used to live very close to where the practice facility was. So when I was growing up, I didn't have a gym membership because I used to bounce around where I lived quite a bit. So I used to sneak into the weight room. So after about 4 months of sneaking in, there was a new strength coach, and he found me in there, and he asked me how long I'd been doing that or what was going on. And I told him, I said, I've been coming in here because I don't have a gym membership. I was like 16, 17 maybe. I said, I don't have a gym membership, so I just sneak in here. And he goes, how often? And I was like, well, I'm in here like pretty much every day. And he was like, no, I come in first. I'm here at 6 a.m. And I was like, well, I come in at 4:30. And I try to get out by like 5:30. So he goes, you come in here 5 days a week? He goes, I've never even noticed it. It's so clean. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, I try to make sure I don't get in trouble. That's and awesome. He goes, well, you must be really good at cleaning. Do you want a job? So he offered me a job working for him, cleaning the weight room when I was in high school still. So my mother was pretty overweight when I was growing up, and I saw that she was like treated pretty unfairly in general. Like it was a different time, right? Like kind of fat shaming is like it's much different then than now. Like now it's pretty taboo and everyone knows that. But 20 years ago, that wasn't the case. Like 20 years ago, people were pretty ruthless and mean to people that were overweight. So I always had like a big heartstring for people who were overweight and ended up being like diabetic clients or whatnot. But that kind of inspired me from the Syracuse men's basketball perspective, and then also from my mother being overweight. Those are the two things that I really like wanted to learn more about, to be able to help those two situations, one being my mom and the other one learning how to train athletes. So I ended up going to school in college. There was only 2 schools in New York State that had like public school education, that had like exercise physiology, and it was Cortland and Brockport. And when I played basketball in high school, the coach who came in, although he won, I don't even know, 500-600 games, which is amazing because he only played like 20 a year. He was like one of the most winningest coaches in New York State history, and he came in, but his system was really slow and boring, and I was just ready to get out and play. So I actually made my college decision more on the style of play for basketball.
Okay, sure.
And Cortland was kind of slow, and Brockport was kind of fast. So at that time in my life, it's funny, like you get things right on accident.
Yeah, right?
Like, I ended up going to a school, and they didn't even have exercise physiology as a major at the time. They only had physical education. And then after my freshman year, they changed, and then they had everything. They had exercise physiology, they had biomechanics, they had kinesiology. But they didn't even have that when I was looking. Like, it just had physical education, so it's another one. Like, I got that one right on accident.
Sure, yeah.
Which, in hindsight, at my age now, I'm like, of course you did. You were 17. Like, how much you actually get right when you're 17, you know? So that's kind of how I started getting into the field. And then from there, got to work up at Syracuse with men's basketball for a bit. And then I was lucky enough to get to mentor with Olympic men's basketball for Canada. And luckily enough for me, the guy who was running the show up there was Sam Gibbs.
Oh, no.
Yeah, exactly.
That's easy.
And for people who don't know, Sam Gibbs is world renowned. He's probably, in my opinion, he's the smartest guy in our field. He's a doctor of osteopathy, amongst many other things. But he's currently like the clinic director at P3 Health in Toronto. And then he comes down and helps us out with Tomahawk in the summer too. So I was lucky enough to learn from him when I was like in college and then right after.
That's so cool.
And then the other beautiful thing about learning from someone like Sam is he's so smart and he has so much information, but he's so humble. Like he's the first guy to lend a hand or explain things, and he can like dumb it down for you, he can dial it up for you, and he just goes way out of his way to make sure everyone has what they need. So for me, it opened my eyes really early to like, there's so much information out there and it keeps evolving. You need to keep up on your literature. You need to keep learning from other people. Just being around Sam, like, and when I was younger, it just made me realize like how much I didn't know. And I feel like that was probably the most important thing for being around him, outside of him being like humble and kind-hearted and willing to help. It's just there's always a better answer. There's always more information out there. There's always a different way to look at it. It's not like the right or wrong way. It's just a different way to view it. So I got really lucky and got to work for him. And then I came out to Chicago, and I hadn't really been anywhere besides Syracuse, Rochester, and then Toronto. So I came out to Chicago, and I was out here for like NBA Combine. They used to do it on the west side at Tech Athletics.
Yeah.
I think it's MultiQuest now. And I saw the city, and I was like, wow. I was like, this looks just like Toronto. I was like, I think I can do this. I was like, I think I can move out of upstate New York, and I can actually move to a major city and do it. But that was only because of my experience in Toronto. So it's like, once again, you know, at 17, 18, I got it right on accident. At 21, 22, I got it right on accident again. And then it just happened to be a really positive situation here. And then I bounced around between here and Southern California, and then Toronto a little bit, just over the last 10 years or so.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I've been super lucky so far.
That's really cool. Yeah, because I remember, you know, like after we connected, you know, I was working at a gym downtown, and then I left that and went to a gym for independent contractors, and that's where we were able to reconnect. And so then, you know, it started, you know, following you more on social and stuff, and seeing like during the winter months, you would go out to LA and work with people there and whatnot. And so how did that transition work? Because I mean, you know, Chicago's a long way from LA, you know, at least like, you know, Rochester to Chicago is drivable, but you know that's a heck of a jump to make. So how did that transition work for you?
Yeah, so really, like when I tell people I'm in Chicago for the winters now, just these last 2 years, people are like, oh, how are you doing with the winter? Because you're coming from Los Angeles. I normally tell them, well, I used to live in Syracuse. So we get 10 feet of snow every year, So people say, oh, so you're used to it. And I'm like, no, I don't feel that way about it. I'm not used to it. I served my time in it. And that was one of the big reasons why I went to Los Angeles or Southern California, was because it was beautiful. It was 75 and sunny, and I love warm weather, and I love the beach, and the topography there was great. Like the hills kind of roll into the oceans. There's probably not 10 places in the world that look like that. Sure. And I just fell in love with it when I was out there. So here in the summer, we were running like off-season NHL, NBA guys, and then for the rest of the year, we're doing people in entertainment, like either getting them ready for like movies or TV shows or different roles that they had to play, and then a couple people behind the scenes, like more managers and agents that were with one of the larger agencies that was based out of Los Angeles.
Now, Ian, is that what you're doing now as well? Are you still kind of going back and forth to different cities?
No, so for the past 2 years, I've been working with Patrick Kane, and he's locally in Chicago. He's here all year, and I have actually spent the last 2 winters here. We'll see what happens going forward. We'll see what happens this coming year. But I think we're going to be teaching a decent amount of like education, and we do some like consulting for pro teams now. So we'll probably be bouncing around a little bit more than we were the last couple of years.
And there was a period of time where you had a TV show, or you were on a TV show, right? From a training perspective, if I remember correctly. What was what was going on there?
Yeah, so I was working with one of the producers from the Oprah Winfrey Show originally. And she asked me if I would jump on one of her shows to help get it picked up, because they needed a male and they were in a bind, and it was a Wednesday and they were filming it on Friday.
There you go.
Right place, right time. That works out great.
And that's kind of how those things happen. And then that was probably about 10 to 18 hours I had to put in for that. So It's like a drop in the bucket compared to everything else. It seems like, it took years and years and years to like learn, acquire knowledge, meet people, practice, get good results, figure out ways to get better results, loop back around. It seems like it's like a never-ending mountain that you're climbing, Sure. And then sometimes there's like random things that are like one-offs that come up. My favorite part of moving out of Syracuse, I always tell people, is it made me feel like I could start to say yes to things, even if I wasn't sure that I would be good at them. And I feel like in Syracuse or in upstate New York, or at least in my experience, it was a lot more of like, stay in your lane, don't venture too far outside it, be careful, protect yourself, and that was it. And then once I got out of that and got to like live in Chicago and live in Los Angeles, I realized like it's okay to try things that you don't know you're good at or not. It's okay to fail. It's okay to not be the best at something. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to try different things. And I think that experience dealing with those people in entertainment was very valuable to me, because that world was so foreign to me. It just kind of opened my eyes up to like, oh, it's okay to swing. You can try stuff, see what else is out there. You can lend your hand, lend your mind. It was cool. It was a good experience for me, I thought. I took a couple good positive things from it, especially it being such a short amount of time.
So how long were you working with people in entertainment? Was that a long period of time, or just a couple years?
So it was probably 3 8-month spans. So it'd be like from whenever NBA, NHL off season's over, like September 15 or so till May 15. Mm-hmm. And it was very, very, very different for sure, right? I mean, if you want to talk about like sport performance versus body composition, obviously they're very different things. The bodies are different, the personality types are different, the drive is different, their nightlife is different.
Sure.
Like all of it,
Sure.
But one of the things I really loved about being out in California was just the average person definitely cared about health and wellness much more than a lot of other places that I've lived. And for me, that was cool, because you don't get to see that too much in Syracuse and Rochester and those areas. And then, you're in Chicago and you're like, wow, people really care about their health here compared to Syracuse and Rochester. Then you're in Los Angeles and you're like, wow, people really care about their health here. So it's like wherever you are, it's always somewhere in the middle. It was nice. It's nice to be around people who prioritize some of the things that I thought were important. From like a health and wellness standpoint. And I just thought it was really fascinating, and it was just a great experience for me.
That's really neat. So let's jump to I mean, not necessarily present day right now, but let's go to when you started Tomahawk and kind of talk to us about Tomahawk and how that came about and then what it has evolved into today.
Yeah, so when I started it, what I really wanted to do was I thought there was like a kind of like a hole or a gap in the industry, and it seemed like everything was segmented. It was like, all right, all the traditional physical therapists line up over there. All right, all the massage therapists line up over there. All right, all of the sport performance trainers line up over there. All right, all the medical docs line up over there. And to me, that's a selfish from an industry standpoint. And I thought if we could just bring together a bunch of different people from a bunch of different disciplines, we would get a more 360-degree view on how to treat these athletes and how to better serve them. So we've brought in a bunch of people that are trained in a bunch of different ways. So they all view the body in different ways, and it's been really positive so far to be able to put a team together that can kind of like all row the boat in the same direction. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's not always the case, right? Like sometimes you jump in and whoever's running the show on something thinks it has to be their way. Mm-hmm. And to me, if you're going to be working with like really high level athletes or high level people in entertainment, then I don't think there's any more room for your ego. Mm-hmm. I think dealing with high level professional athletes, you have to have room for their egos in some capacity, and really what you're there to do is help them and serve them in some capacity. So if to me in our field, if you have made it about you, that's the only way I think you can do it wrong. That and getting someone hurt. So my view on Tomahawk was, can we get a bunch of people together that view the body and how to train and how to treat their bodies in a bunch of different ways, and if everybody can buy into this, it'll end up being the best product out for the athletes, which is supposed to be the point. Like, we're supposed to be helping them. So that was the original view on it. And now we kind of said we're like a third-party sports science consulting firm who we work for the players, not the teams. Mm-hmm. You know, because we have the players' best interest. That's our mission. The team's best interest is the team, which makes sense. That's like, obviously, that's just how it goes. So from our standpoint, we wanted to give the players like, you know, a voice, or at least have like people on their team that are looking out for their best interest, period. And I think we've done a good job of doing that so far. Obviously, it's still early in the game, and we're still going to continue to like grow it and evolve it and build it, kind of like all the stuff I was talking about earlier with Sam. Same idea of like learning more all the time and continuing to build that. It's the same idea with Tomahawk, like continue to acquire more knowledge, continue to build the team around us, continue to get them better recovery modalities or whatever it is that we can help our guys out with. And so far it's been really rewarding to be a part of.
So you said you said that you were trying to fill this void, you know, and I think that the way you described it really is a void where the professions of people trying to help others, professionals or regular people, that we're all divided. And it's cool that you've tried to say, hey, let's all kind of work together, row the boat in the same direction. I have two questions on that. Number one, what kind of professionals do you often, you know, bring into your business and work with your athletes? And second of all, do you find that they truly do all help push the boat in the same direction? Or do you find that having people in different viewpoints can be challenging or start, you know, rocking the ship in the wrong directions?
Yeah, I think as I've gotten older and been through more interactions with more different people, I feel like I've gotten better at seeing who's who earlier as opposed to later. And I think a lot of that is less about their knowledge base and more about personality type. So there have definitely been people that have been with us here and there doing spot work, and you know, maybe it's just not the perfect fit going forward. But again, like the person who has made it so challenging for anybody to be like that is Sam Gibbs. Like, Sam's with us, and to me, Sam is, I don't know, the smartest guy in the whole field. And if he's going to come in with his ego checked, totally humble, then how can anyone else do any different? You know? So from that standpoint, I think we're in a good spot with that. But it's always challenging, right? Like if you have more than one person making a decision, it's challenging. So we try to do a good job of like just gathering information and attacking it as a team. But sometimes it goes back and forth for sure. And then from the standpoint of who we have in and like what their backgrounds are, like Sammy's he's a DO. You got Igor and Anat in. They're traditionally trained like DPTs, but they do dynamic neuromuscular stabilization through like Prague Rehabilitation Institute. We have a couple we have a functional neurologist who's working with us, and then we have David Traster, who is brilliant mind for sure. I think he learned under Ted Carrick. They just opened up a practice in Chicago. It's him and George Michaelopoulos, and they do a lot of the vision training, vision testing, and the neurological function testing for us. So, like traditionally you'll see athletes, they test their bench press and their vertical leap and squat and whatnot. And we've been able to be lucky enough to test some different things, like non-traditional testing that we run pretty extensively here in the summers now, which is great. Last year we didn't have access to it because their clinic wasn't up and running yet. It was supposed to be July 1st, but you know how those things go. That usually means like August.
Yeah.
August, October, September, October, somewhere in there. So they're open, so they're going to do some of the testing for us. And then we worked with Dr. Bevish Patel, and he is an anti-aging doc. So they run some of the genetic testing for us, and we get some like blood, urine, saliva. They send those things out for us, and then come back, we get all our data, and then we sit down as a team, as a unit, and then try to plan out or map out like how we're going to program for them and how we can like best serve them wherever they are, whether they're in Chicago or a lot of guys go back home in the summer, whatever country they're from. So then luckily enough, we try to quarterback it like digitally or through Skype or whatnot. And then we have a couple trainers, and then we keep evolving it. I think the only person we've left off is Charlie Cates.
What man?
I think that's about it. I think that's pretty much everybody for right now. So it's a pretty well-rounded team. Obviously, it's not over. It's not done. We're still going to keep evolving it and keep bringing more people in and seeing how we can again better serve all our guys. But I think we're starting to be on the right track, which is a good feeling on our end because we just put so much time and energy and effort into it. It's nice to see like some of the results coming through for some of our guys, because they come in and they'll say things like, I want to score more points next year or score more goals next year. And then they come in and they work with some of our guys, and then they start moving better, and then they feel better, and then all of a sudden you hear things that don't have anything to do with the sport. Like one of our guys this week says he's 34 years old, he just had 3 surgeries, he did shoulder and 2 hips, and he's like 11 weeks out of his second hip that he did. And he originally was coming in because he was getting ready for next season. He still has like 4 years left on his deal. And just this week, or last week, he says, he goes, I'm actually a better father now because I can sit on the floor with my kids. So it totally changed, right? Like it's not about points or goals. It's not about sets and reps. It's about like the functionality of what he's getting accomplished in there. He's able to play with his kids on the floor. Like how cool is that? Like that's something you don't expect. Like that's not something you write on the goal sheet. That's not something they're going to test for when he shows up to his team. It's none of that. And it's just really cool to like be a small, tiny part of those people's progress, life, excitement, enjoyment. It's just, I tell everyone I love my job so much because it's an and job. It's me and the athlete, or me and somebody else. It's not a versus.
Sure.
And I just think that's great. Like that's, you get to be a part of like people's ups a little more than their downs. And for me, that's a good thing. It's just nice to have like a positive impact in some capacity for our guys.
That's awesome, man. And, I can really appreciate everything that you're doing from, bringing in a whole group of diverse professionals to try to help, your clients, your athletes achieve what they want to achieve. Talk to us more about the training that you do with your athletes at Tomahawk, because from what I saw, it's very movement specific. It has definitely like very dynamic, explosive aspects to it, with a large emphasis on, both mobility and strength, but not necessarily strength from a traditional like weight room perspective.
Yeah. So really what I've found over the last, 15 years or so is athleticism transfers to strength a little more than strength transfers to athleticism. So if you grab, so people get in trouble with like causation versus correlation, right? So you take Usain Bolt, and he's really fast and he's really athletic, and to me, because of those things, he ends up testing out well. I don't think that if you get somebody to test out well, they're going to be fast and athletic, and I don't think it works like that.
Sure.
A lot of the tests that they run, let's say squat, deadlift, like how many sports are people in a bilateral stance moving? None. Maybe a couple. I don't know. Not that many. I think there are a lot of ways to strength train. I think doing a pull-up or a push-up is strength training. Doing a bear crawl is strength training. I think using bands is strength training. It just has lateral tension instead of vertical tension because of gravity. I think that what we've seen, the only negative that I originally thought there was going to be going through movements more than lifts was that people weren't going to test out well. And then we had a player come in, and we did only movement with him all summer. We took out all of his lifts, and then he showed back up at camp for the Anaheim Ducks, and he set all his PRs.
Wow.
So it's not what we were going for at all. Like we warned them. We're like, hey, listen, guys, you're going to have a good year. You might not test out well with traditional testing because there's adaptation to anything, right? Like you want to be good at bench press. And be good at pull-ups, do pull-ups. So if we're not doing that stuff and then they go and test that, well, we don't expect to do really well on it. But what we found is they actually end up doing well on that too. So I think our field has changed a lot from like 10, 15 years ago. The best strength guys in the world were the guys that had guys testing out the best.
Sure.
And it's like, all right, cool. Well, now what I want to know is not how much your guy can bench press. How many games did they miss?
Yes.
Did they play the whole season? Were they healthy? Okay, so now we can talk. But if you're talking to me about how they were on the first day they showed up with their traditional bench and their traditional squat and their traditional deadlift, it's not that those things are not important. Those things are very important to a lot of people, most of the world. But sometimes with high-level athletes, like they have a lot of strength already, and they might have a good 10 years of strength training or traditional strength training. And if you get them doing different things, sometimes variation is king. Sometimes just changing like a little modality inside of what they're doing can give you a really good response or a really good result. And it might not be as like fun for the strength guys, because the strength guys can, they can say, hey, my guy came in and he was squatting 250. Now he's squatting 350. I did a great job. And it's like, well, yeah, if that's what you're trying to get accomplished with him. But I think as a field, we need to take a step back and not think about what's best for us. You need to think about what's best for your athlete. So, if a guy is a little bit smaller and that's in his advantage, why would you make him bigger?
Right.
That's the total opposite of what you want to do. Like, I'm sure everybody's read Strength Finders, right? Like, if you have an A in math and a C in English, let's get a tutor for math. Let's do more of that. Like you wouldn't pull Shaq out to the 3-point line. Like it's not in his advantage. So just because you're a strength guy or strength coach or something like that, it doesn't mean you can't help your athlete from a different perspective. And I think sometimes in our field, like there's been a lot of misinformation, right, over the last 20, 30 years. And it's nice that now our field is actually like coming to the forefront. Like people are starting to realize how valuable what we do actually is. Just recently, like you saw the Lakers 2 years ago, like LeBron James pulled his groin. These guys missed the playoffs, and the ratings not for the Lakers, the ratings for the NBA playoffs were the lowest they've ever been. Wow. I'm sorry, that's not true. They're the lowest they've been in 10 years or 15 years or something like that. And it's like, to me, when you look at that, if you want to pull a dollar sign out of that, how much is that soft tissue injury? How much did that cost the NBA? Hundreds of millions of dollars. And then they're paying some of the team strength guys are making a couple $100,000. It's like, in what world is someone who's making $200,000 protecting a $400 million asset?
Right.
So it's just a totally different thing. Like just recently, people are realizing how valuable it is. The injury prevention part is huge. Like these guys, let's say the cap's $100 million and $30 million of it they paid to guys that didn't play. Like that's as bad of an investment as you can get. You get zero for $30 million. Like that's horrible. So I think the field has changed a lot from that standpoint, right? Like it's not just like, all right, hey, my guy's 350 pounds and he's really big and strong. Now it's like, okay, cool. How many games did he miss? How well is he playing? And then there's some like quantifiable things on one side, and then on the other side is like, how does he feel, right? Like how do you feel? Do you feel like you have good energy? Like there's a lot of back and forth, and I feel like the more information we gather, the better we can help these guys. And I don't think there's like one set program for everybody, obviously, because we're all so individualized. People say sports specific. Okay, well, what does that mean? To me, it's position specific, it's body specific, it's even more than that.
Yeah.
Like I see some of the basketball guys, some of these guys are 5'10", some of them are 7'2".
Sure.
Some of them run fast, jump high, some of them shoot threes. Like there's a wide range of everybody. So I don't think it's exactly a one size fits all thing. But for us, what we found is like the movement pattern and the actual body movements that they go through, to me, is more valuable, because that's the only thing they're bringing with them from the weight room or from the clinic or wherever we are helping these guys. The only thing they're leaving there with is their body. They're not leaving there with the bench press. They're not leaving there with the squat. They're not leaving there with the weight they lifted. They're not leaving with any of that. They're leaving with just their body. So if you can master the mechanics of your body, I think that is the transferability of what we do, to me. And I think that's kind of how we got to the more body weight stuff and less traditional lifting. And I would say, like, for the average person who's not an athlete, I think traditional strength training is very, very, very valuable. Very valuable. Like, my mother is in her 70s, and I would feel better if she was someone who worked out 3 days a week and did her traditional lifting. And, there's no worries about, like, falling as she gets older, Like, that's a big concern or a big fear of mine. And she's someone who should be strength training. So there's that, too. So it's not like we're not exactly against traditional lifting. We just found, like, a lot of the guys that we have, especially the professional athletes, they seem to perform a little bit better if they can master the basics savagely well and then move on or progress it from there.
And you bring up a really good point, which I think can be transferred to a lot of different examples. Like you brought up, obviously you work with athletes, but then you brought up your mother. And I think one thing that I gathered from what you had said was, like, what are people leaving their workout with? And almost valuing that the most, because I think a lot of times we get so caught up in, like, oh man, how many sets and reps did you do? Did you get the WOD done? Or, we pride ourselves in the workout part rather than, like, how are you leaving? What are you taking away from the workout? Is it helping your game? Is it helping your life? Is it helping your joints? And I love that you bring that up, because I kind of took that from what you said. And then it was beautiful that you brought up your mother, because with Charlie and I, Charlie works with some pros, but I just work for, regular people trying to be awesome at their life. And so many times I'm having to remind people, like, hey, it's not about what we do in the session, but it's about what the session does for you when you leave, when you step out of here, because it's about living your life. It's about performing, whether you're on a field or on a court or, in an office or at home with your kids. So I appreciate your perspective on that. I did have a question, because you said, we were kind of talking about the lifts, right? It's like, we can value, how strong are you in these lifts, or how are you testing out? But then you brought up the point, it's like, how is this person feeling? How is this athlete playing? What's their longevity even during a season? What kinds of things do you guys do at Tomahawk that helps the longevity or the sustainability of someone's body throughout this aggressive playing season, or to prepare for a season?
So one of the things we put in that seems to work really well so far is actually, and I have to give Sam Gibbs credit on this, because he was saying to do this from the start, and at some points it can take 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 conversations to agree upon something, like we talked about earlier. And what he wanted to do was put in a daily questionnaire. So he just has really simple, there's 5, 6, 7 questions on there, and every day these guys check in. They just say, like, how they're feeling, how they slept. We track their food. In the season, some of these guys are with the Blackhawks, and they're actually in the Western Conference, which is odd. So they, in my experience, they have the worst travel schedule of any professional sports team that I've seen, because they will do a down and back to New York, and then they're back, and then they'll fly back to New Jersey, and then they're back, and it's like, well, maybe you guys should just stay there. Mm-hmm. And then the majority of their games are on the West Coast, so they have longer flights for that. So you have to take into account how much they're on the plane. You have to take into account that they're not sleeping in their own beds. Professional sports or professional athletics, like from afar, it looks like it's a very easy life, right? Like people will say, oh, these guys are so young and they make so much money, and their job, they're not working 82 days a year. They're working 365 days a year. Like I'm sure everyone's heard like 724, 365. We always joke around and say 825, 366. Like these guys are on overdrive. Like they're always working on their body. They're trying to track everything they can, and what we try to do is we try to grab as much data as possible from them, whether it be, like we talked about earlier, quantitative stuff or qualitative stuff. We try to get a combination of both of those things, and then from there, we try to formulate like an individualized program for each one of them, because their bodies respond so differently. Like their central nervous system, Charlie, they're so different, right? Like some of these guys, they can rev the engine and they can go full throttle 7, 8, 9, 10 days in a row. Some of them are like, they don't need that. Some of them just need to be like fine-tuned a little bit, just need a little oil change, a little rub down on the hood, and they're good to go. I think sometimes too, with really high-level guys, sometimes in our field we can get stuck in, oh, well, he can run fast, jump high, I want to see him do that. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, that might not be what's best for the athlete. So I think on our end, I think you got to take a step back and always look at what's best for the athlete and kind of program it out from there. With specifically the hockey guys, because there's the skating involved, is we will actually taper their load mid-summer, which is different than pretty much any other sport that I've been around. Usually guys are trying to write some form of programming that has them peaking in the weight room around the time they're showing up to camp, again, usually for testing. But a lot of our work and intensity and volume comes a little bit earlier in the off season or a little bit earlier in the summer, because we know they're going to add in, 7 to 15 hours a week of like pretty intensive skating that we're not out there for. So we need to work in complement with the skills coach or the skating coaches as well. And that's another part, like we were talking about earlier, with everybody checking their ego. The most important thing we're doing for the guys, it might not be at the end of August. That might be their skills coach. That might be their skating coach. The time that's most important for us, it might be right after the season. Like, let's get these guys back to neutral or back to symmetrical or whatever anybody wants to call it. And then we can kind of build out their system. And we always say, like, we take our time with it. And if we could build out the house wider, the wider you build out the base, the higher you can build the house. Mm-hmm. So we take our time with our guys for sure. We get them a lot of different eyes on them. We try to give them whatever they need. Some of the younger guys need a ton of help on, like, I'd say basic nutrition. Here's a 19-year-old kid who comes in and they call him like Chubbs or like Candyman or something like that, and you get to talking to him and it's like, oh, this kid drinks soda pop and like eats sugar and he's a professional athlete. Like, it's pretty crazy to most people. And then there's older guys that have done pretty much everything they think they can to give themselves every advantage, and then those are the more interesting ones for us to work with. Like, it's like a more challenging Rubik's Cube to put together. Like, my mom could tell this 19-year-old kid that he shouldn't be eating sugar. He knows he shouldn't be drinking soda pop and then going to play. But the more fun ones or the more interesting ones for us are the guys that are trying not to leave anything on the table, and they think they've exhausted all options, and then we dive into some of their like genetic testing, and then we find out different ways to like manipulate their body and help them going forward. It's like those are the more fun puzzles for us, or for me at least.
Ian, speak to the importance, because you brought it up a little bit, you kind of alluded to it. Speak to the importance of recovery within your athlete's kind of training program and how that helps them train at higher intensities for longer periods of time, and not recovery from just like totally taking a day off, because like I was there on your recovery days and your guys were sweating intensely on their recovery days. But so what's kind of the thought process that goes into recovery, and what are some of the different things that get implemented to help your athletes recover?
Yeah, so like you said, recovery is that's the name of the game, right? That's everything. Like if you want to perform better, you need to be able to practice more. You need to be able to train more, and the only way you can do those things at a high clip is if you're well recovered. So we try to add in. Well, it depends on the person, right? I'd say that the number one thing that we do now that we didn't used to do 10, 15, 20 years ago is we do active instead of passive stuff. So to me, we're not that smart. We're not as smart as the body. Like the body's a much more complicated machine than we can even understand right now. So to me, what we want to do is we just want to kind of like nudge the circulatory system in the right direction, because like if you can get their blood flowing a little bit, it's going to do all kinds of things, right? It's going to flush toxins, it's going to bring fresh nutrients, it's going to bring oxygen. People are going to perform better, people are going to function better, people are going to recover better. So for us, when we do our active recovery days, like you've seen, like we want to get these guys moving a little bit, we want their heart rate elevated, we want to go through a little bit of like movement pattern and correctional stuff. And then we'll also use sauna. We use the infrared sauna. And then one of the big tools that we use too is the power plate. So we'll use like, they call it like whole body vibration, and we'll throw them on that. And then from a nutritional standpoint, they track all of their food, and depending on who it is, they will have X amount of hours that they're gonna not eat before they go to sleep. I'm trying to think what else we have these guys on. Oh, the most important thing of all is sleep, right? Mm-hmm. So with everything I just talked about, none of that matters if they're not sleeping, right? If they're not sleeping well, there's going to be no substitute for that outside of, I don't know, like IGF-1 or human growth hormone, or something like that, like things that need to happen when you're sleeping. So that's, we try to nail that with our guys. Try to get like different touch points in, different hands on them. Sometimes do like a little bit of like a flush almost, like just again trying to like leverage circulatory system on our side as much as we can. And it seems like those things really help expedite the process of repair, but we're still evolving that.
Will you expand a little bit on what you meant by 10, 15 years ago, you used to do a lot of passive stuff, but now you do active stuff? What did you mean by that? What was the thought process that you guys used to follow, and now versus what you just explained for today?
So like if you can increase blood or circulation to an area, it's going to speed up repair. And 15 years ago, they'd say, throw some ice on that thing. So it's like, well, that's actually probably going to get a little less blood there. Mm-hmm. So, and now we do it a little different. Now we get guys moving, get their heart rate elevated, and we get their cardiovascular system moving a little bit. And that's more what I would consider like active repair or active recovery, or, moving on your day off instead of just sitting on your couch. And usually if you have two different subjects and one of them is sedentary on their day off and one of them is moving a little bit, what we found is the guys that move a little bit seem to recover quicker. And again, if they can recover quicker, they can train more or play more of their sport or do whatever it is they like to do. So I think that's been a big difference in our field. It's like passive recovery versus active recovery.
So Ian, if one of our listeners is listening to this right now and they're thinking to themselves, well, you know what, like I'm not a professional athlete, so this conversation doesn't apply to me. I would actually beg to differ, because I think the concepts that you are discussing and that you are applying with your athletes probably have a greater carryover to the general population, because the duration of their sport is the duration of their life, right? So they're trying to be able to perform well, or at least be able to perform life well, for as long as possible. So with that being said, do you have, 2-3 things that you would definitely recommend people doing, pro athlete, professional parent, professional office worker, wherever they are in their stage of life and athleticism, that would help prolong their ability to perform well at whatever given task they're looking to do?
Yeah, for sure. I think so one thing there is, I would say, if you want to call them non-athletes and athletes, I would say they have something larger in common, and they're human, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're breaking down like human movements, it's going to be transferable to humans. So I think you're totally right. Like it doesn't it's more transferable for people that have everyday lives, because we are going to live to 100. Our age group is absolutely going to live that long, and people need to or should be taking care of their bodies before there are issues, because we're all going to run into issues, and the stuff that we do with our athletes, it's kind of to like either wind back the clock with them a little bit, or dial up their speed or their execution of whatever they're trying to get accomplished. And the imbalances that the majority of people have from having the same job for 20, 30, 40 years and sitting in their cars and watching TV or being on their laptops, those imbalances are as bad, if not worse, than a lot of the athletes that we see, because it's been for a longer time. Like these guys are athletes, they're young though, right? Like they have huge imbalances, but they have huge imbalances for being 30. They don't have huge imbalances for life. Like a lot of these people are very affected by their sedentary lifestyles, as you guys know. And I think the largest thing I think we can do is support those people in taking those first couple steps to get moving. So I think it's important for our field as a whole to kind of get the message out of like, we're not this like big, strong meathead industry that shames people who are not in shape. That's not the case at all. We're here with a helping hand. We're here to communicate out good information, and no matter what level you're at, you should just be training one level above. So if my mom walks in the gym and she's a 3 out of 100, then we would train her at a 4. If LeBron James walks in and he's at 104, we train him at 105. Like we're always trying to climb the ladder just a little bit. I would say getting moving and believing that you actually can, I would say, is invaluable. And then the other things, try to give people like really easy things to do, right? Like drink water. Like it's free in our country.
Sure.
That's not the case everywhere in the world. And that's something that if people hydrate, if people have quality sleep, and they just get moving a little bit, it's going to help everybody. Like I would say those are 3 huge pillars that if people can hit those 3, everything else will fall into place. In our field, I feel like a lot of times we get stuck discussing like sets and reps. It's like, well, what percentage of the world does it actually make a difference to if you're doing 3 sets of 12 or 4 sets of 10?
Right. Yeah.
Does it? I don't know. I've been in the field about 15 years. I don't think it matters that much. I think what matters for most people is getting quality sleep, staying hydrated, and being able to move around and do a bunch of different things that are like kind of in your everyday life, and then supplement that with some kind of professional that can help you get across the bridge that you can't quite cross yourself. And then we say we want to teach our guys to like expand their toolbox. So it could be teaching them like a lunge sequence that they can do on their own. It could be teaching them like hurdles they can do in their hotel room. It could be any number of things. You don't want to overload people. You want to let people know it's realistic, which it is. It's entirely realistic. And one of the other things that I tell people is I love our field and I love exercise and working out, because for me, my whole life, it's been a place where I can go and get a win no matter what's going on outside of there. And as I get older, the more I realize, the less you're actually in control of things, right? Like you can't really control much except yourself. So your own body, that's something you do have control over. So like you can go walk a couple miles, you can go hike, you can do a couple squats, you can take the long way to get the mail. There's lots of ways to like build it into your life. And you don't have to be intimidated. You're not going to get thrown in the squat rack and have 500 pounds come down. You're going to get hurt. Like that's not what our field is for,
Right.
You know? Our field is here to help. We're here to like engage people and help them along in their process, however that is. I think a lot of stuff right now with people having to stay inside, I think some of the in-home bodyweight stuff is kind of coming a little more to the forefront, which I actually think is a good thing, right? Because even when we have full access to a gym, that's what we're using. So now that everyone's locked in their house, now it's a good time to master those basics like we were talking about earlier. And I think just getting moving a little bit in any way that people enjoy is positive, because they're going to end up doing that longer. Like if you like volleyball or you like tennis, you're going to do that more frequently than if you think it's a daunting task to go lift some weights. You're just not going to do it. You're not going to stick with it. So I think finding something you like is important. And then always remembering, like, I personally have never finished a workout and then looked at myself and been like, man, I shouldn't have done that. That was a mistake. So like once you get a couple good workouts or a couple good wins, if you've been on the couch for the last 20, 30 years, you feel better about it, and then it just starts to roll. It's a snowball either way. So we say like front load your intensity, front load your focus, get the snowball on your side, get momentum on your side, and go from there.
I love that, man. I think that's so applicable, and it is, you nailed exactly what people, just kind of easy wins that people can get to, like you're saying, get the ball rolling and let it snowball from there. So I'm curious, that's what our listeners can do, but what do you do on like a daily and weekly basis to maintain your own health, to maintain, your own function and performance?
Well, when I was in Southern California, I would hike a lot. Like I really enjoyed doing that. That's probably the thing I miss most about being out there. So right now I try to grab 3 or 4 full body workouts every week. I'll do some combination of like moving around, a little bit of speed stuff, and then I'll try to hit like 1 or 2 traditional lifts a day. And then after that, I'll spend a decent amount of time like stretching. I use the power plate pretty much every day. Then I'll jump in the sauna as well.
Very good stuff.
And then in the summertime, it's nothing because I'm exhausted by the time we're done.
Right. I was going to say your schedule is nuts. So yeah, I can appreciate that for sure. So Ian, is there anything that we haven't asked you that we should have asked you about your area of expertise?
Oh, I don't think so. I'm always shocked when anybody wants to hear my opinion on anything. So,
well, how can people connect with you? How can they learn more about Tomahawk? How can they follow you and kind of learn more about the work that you're doing?
TomahawkScience.com. It's our website.
Right on.
And we have a YouTube channel, and we actually just put out some content for esports athletes.
Oh, cool.
Which I'm actually very excited about.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool.
So it's a little different than all of the other sports, but we'll see what happens. I think it's a new and evolving field. It's a new take on sports, and I think at some point traditional sports and esports are going to merge somehow, some way. Okay. So I think it's cool because I've always, my whole life, I've been on like Team Nerd, or like Revenge of the Nerds. And for me to like now get to see it come to fruition with esports taking over right now is a pretty cool thing to see.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. Are you guys on Instagram or Facebook where people could follow?
Yeah, yes. I am on Instagram at Ian J. Mack. And then we also have Tomahawk Science. So we have both of those handles on Instagram, and then our YouTube is just Tomahawk Science.
Okay, and humor me for my lack of knowledge. What is esports? Am I unaware of this field of
esports? like competitive video gaming.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's awesome.
So really, you can use exercise to help you do whatever you're wanting to do in life, including esports.
Right? Think about like cognitive function or brain function. If you can train that system out, it should be an advantage, right?
I think that maybe a year ago or so, you had an MAT client, and you had to work on his like shoulders, elbows, hands, and wrists for that reason.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
And they think like their shelf life right now like is 3-4 years. It's like that shouldn't be the case. And I watched some of the videos, and these guys are like smoking cigarettes, and I'm like, what are you guys doing?
Like, I'm gonna take this seriously.
Right? Exactly. Well, Ian, the question that we like wrapping up with for all of our guests is, what is your definition of health?
My definition of health would be being able to feel good enough where your body is not your limiting factor to accomplish whatever your brain is trying to accomplish. And then just being picky is brain health is a very big deal on top of body health. And brain health right now is getting a decent amount of attention, especially in hockey, because of all of the concussions and CTE. And one of the docs that I know at Rush, she's like one of the leading neurologists in the whole world, and she deals with a lot of Parkinson's patients, and her name is Deborah Hall, and she's the section chief of the movement disorder wing over there now. And some of the literature that's coming out that they have is interesting and scary, probably not in that order. So we'll see what happens going forward. But brain health, body health, you don't want either of those things to be your limiting factor. So I guess I would just say that to me is health. Like being able to do what you want when you want, and not having your body be your limiting factor.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's what we talk. Thanks, man. Thank you. Yeah, right on.
So you ask it on repeat, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's so cool because we've got to ask a number of people from a bunch of different backgrounds. And what I would say is, in the majority of responses, kind of trend or at least hint towards exactly what you're talking about, like being able to do what you want to do when you want to do it and not have your body be the, like you're saying, the limiting factor. Essentially just being able to do all the things in life you enjoy doing for as long as you want to do them. So I mean, that's awesome. And it's what's so interesting is, even though there are so many professionals out there that have that viewpoint or that definition of health, so often that is not necessarily portrayed as health. So often health is portrayed as, well, these are your cholesterol numbers, and this is your blood pressure, and all this other stuff. And it's like, well, wait, there's so much more to life than that. And so I can definitely appreciate where you're coming from with that. Ian, man, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your stories and your expertise with us, man. I really need to commend you, because just kind of watching you work this past summer, it was so cool. You can tell that you are a student. You can tell how detailed and meticulous you are. I mean, you are constantly taking notes, scribing things in your notebook, and just everything, whether it's, I don't know what you were scribing, whether it was thoughts, whether it was questions, whether it was observations, but you are constantly, taking notes and writing things down. And to me, that's somebody that's not on autopilot. That's somebody that is trying to get better, and that's somebody that's really trying to figure out how to serve those that he's working with to the best of his ability. So I want to commend you for that, because to do that day in and day out with your schedule is not an easy task. So thank you for bringing that to the table every single day.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it, guys.
Oh, it's our pleasure, man, for sure.
Thanks for talking with us.
Yeah.
For sure. Hopefully we could do it again.
So there you have it. Some super applicable things that you can start doing to improve your overall health, to improve your overall well-being, and to be able to function at your best for as long as you want to function at your best. So who do you know that needs to hear this episode? Who do you know that is not performing as well as they would like to in sport or in life? If they're in the Chicago area, make sure to send this episode to them so they can learn about the amazing work that Ian is doing with his clients at Tomahawk Science. And if they're not in the Chicago area, send this episode to them anyways, so they can learn how exercise, how movement, how nutrition can help them improve their overall function, their overall well-being, to live the life that they want to live. And while you're online, if you wouldn't mind, head on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and review. It helps people find this podcast when they're looking for podcasts on exercise and when they're looking for podcasts on health. So if you found value in this conversation today, let us know by leaving us a 5-star rating and review. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week.